You know what? To the day that I die, Pat Morita will always be Mr. Miyagi to me. The Karate Kid movie influenced me so much as a kid. Everybody was trying to do that bird crane kick on somebody and it just never worked. Wow. But Bruce Lee, Shaolin Kung Fu movies, and Mr. Miyagi made me want to learn martial arts. That's a fact. But now that I'm older and found out that Mr. Miyagi, Daniel LaRusso, and Johnny Lawrence, them in real life really didn't know no karate at all. That's just crazy to me, man. But Pat Morita though, great actor and one of the first Asian actors who took over Hollywood. But like many celebrities that we grew up and loved, they all get caught up, man, with alcohol and drugs in Hollywood. You know, there's a saying about comedians that a lot of them are depressed, have a lot of mental issues, and end up becoming an addict to substance abuse because they was trying to get out of the dark world by being funny. They say that laughter distracts from feelings of weakness. In general, they say people with a more creative side do seem to have a greater rate of mood disorders. You know what? Let's get into the Pat Morita story, who we all remember and loved in the movie, The Karate Kid. Now, Noriyuki Pat Morita was born June 28th, 1932 in Alton, California. Now, his parents came to California as immigrants from Japan in the early 1900s. Now, here's the crazy part though, right? Here's the crazy part. When Pat was about 2 years old, he ended up getting spinal tuberculosis, which left him in a full body cast from the shoulders all the way down to his knees. Wow. His parents, they couldn't afford the medical attention he really needed. And doctors told him he probably wouldn't live long and never walk again because at that time, tuberculosis was everywhere and wasn't curable. So from the age of 2 years old to the age of 11 years old, he spent his whole life in the hospital laying on a bed. Wow, that's crazy, man. And look, his biological mother, she really didn't want to deal with the whole situation he was going through, and she ended up abandoning him. And it was his aunt, though. His aunt, she decided to take on the responsibility to be his mother. Now bedridden and told he probably would never walk again. To entertain himself, he would draw and read a lot, but what he really liked to do was listen to shows on the radio. All the funny ones at the time, like Amos and Andy, the Jack Benny program, etc. And he also fell in love with music and mystery shows that used to come on the radio too. Now, around the year 1939, some new doctors came and, they performed an experimental surgery on his spine and cured him. And, just like that, he started walking again. Wow, that's crazy. It was a miracle because the medicine was penicillin. Penicillin got discovered, and that's what saved him. After that, around the time of World War II, following the attack of the Pearl Harbor, he was sent to Arizona to be with his parents at the Gila River War Relocation Center, which was really an American concentration camp. Wow, that's crazy. A concentration camp in America, y'all? Wow. He was escorted to an intimate camp by an FBI agent. See, we all thought that Germany was the only place that had camps. Wow, that's crazy. And he said it was terrible there, with a lot of people taking their own lives, a bunch of stillborn babies, people sick with no medical attention, not enough to eat, and everything. Pat said, look, for the first 4 days he arrived back with his family after walking again, he said he cried not because of the war and concentration camp he was on. He said he was homesick because he missed the nurses at the hospital who took care of him all those years he couldn't walk. You got to remember, he learned how to speak English while he was in the hospital, and when he got back with his parents, they only spoke Japanese. It was very difficult for him at that time. But after about a year and a half on that concentration camp, he and his family was transferred to another relocation center. But when the war was over, him and his family moved to Fairfield, California. And then they moved to Sacramento and opened up a Chinese restaurant in the black neighborhood. But, Pat said he stayed in Fairfield because he wanted to graduate from high school with his friends. And around that time, just like the blacks, him and his family dealt with a lot of racism too during that time. But he said it was more so the older people who were racist, because the kids in school treated him like a regular person. He was on the basketball and baseball team and everything. Everybody loved him in high school. After graduating high school, he went to help his family at the restaurant and was supposed to be going to college, but his family told him he couldn't go because they needed his help at the restaurant, which was, that crushed him. That crushed his dreams of becoming a doctor, because he really didn't want to work the restaurant. But during that time, he said you were supposed to listen to your parents, so he couldn't go to college. And then he had to face some tragedy when his father was killed in 1956 in a hit and run while walking home from a all-night movie. He was hit by a pickup truck, and the driver didn't even know he hit him, and he just dragged him under the car for blocks. Wow, that's sad, man. Pat was devastated behind that, man. He was devastated. And him and his mother maintained and kept the family restaurant going. And, everybody just loved Pat in the neighborhood because he was always making people laugh and telling jokes. But he really wanted to go to college, man, become a doctor. But he had to help his mom at the restaurant. Now, also during that time, right, he ended up getting married to his first wife and had a daughter. And, that's when he decided he needed to get a better job to take care of his family. Now 30 years old and working and taking care of his family, he wanted to do something else. For him, it was now or never. He wanted to pursue his dreams to become an entertainer in show business. He wanted to be a comedian. And, he quit his job in the aerospace industry and started doing stand-up comedy all around his area and started going by the name Pat, because most of the comics at that time was named either Pat or Jack. So he decided to go with Pat. And that's when he ended up meeting a woman named Sally Marr, who was actually the mother of the late great comic named Lenny Bruce. And she started to manage him and get him gigs. When he got with her, she gave him the stage name The Hip Nip. Everybody started knowing him by the name The Hip Nip. And she got him on the Hollywood Palace show, the Johnny Carson show, and many more. And his buzz started to grow. And he ended up landing his first role in the movie called Thoroughly Modern Millie. And then he landed some roles on the shows Green Acres, Columbo, Hawaii Five-0. But then he got his big major role on the show called MASH. I know y'all remember MASH. And after that, he did 7 episodes on Sanford and Son as Lamont's friend, Achu. Him and Red Fox were friends way before he got on the show, because he opened up for Red Fox before at a club. And Red Fox gave him a $3,500 loan for him to purchase his home at that time when he was going through some financial issues. They were real good friends. Red Fox helped out a lot of people, man. He helped out a lot of people. And when he was going through his financial troubles, nobody really helped him. It was sad to see that on TV. I remember watching that. But anyway, Pat was good friends with Red Fox, and Pat was also good friends with Flip Wilson before he blew up too. Now, after that, then he played probably his biggest role on a TV series called Happy Days as the cook Arnold. And he didn't even have to read for that part because he knew the director of the show. But also around that time, maybe like he had some years in on the show Happy Days, he had to face some bad stuff. Like he ended up losing his house due to a massive mudslide. Wow. Pat said it was so bad that the mud filled his pool, banged through the house, and literally there was 3 feet of mud in the house all through the house. Some other celebrities lost their house due to that same mudslide, like Burgess Meredith, who played in the movie Rocky as his trainer Mick. Y'all remember him, and Larry Hagman, who played JR on Dallas. They also lost their house to the mudslides. But you know, the show Happy Days, man, was a big hit. Number one. It was rated number one at the time, and Pat was on everybody. You know, he was one of everybody's favorite character, which led to him leaving the show to get his own show because, you know, they offered him his own show, his own sitcom called Mr. T and Tina. He was one of the first Asian American actors to become a regular face on TV. You know, when he got his own show, Mr. T and Tina, it only aired 4 times and ended up being canceled due to low ratings. But the rumors, it was circulating that America wasn't really ready for an all Asian family sitcom. Wow, that's crazy. But you know, right after that, he did appear in 13 episodes of the show called Blansky's Beauties, which was a spinoff of the show Happy Days that aired on ABC. But that show was also canceled after 13 episodes. So now with his own TV show canceled and Blansky's Beauties canceled, Pat continued to audition for more work, but really couldn't land any roles. I mean, he did some episodes on Magnum PI, Laverne and Shirley, The Incredible Hulk, Aloha Paradise, The Love Boat. But you know, it became a struggle to find a gig, and that's when he went to Hawaii to find some work because nobody was offering him any roles in Hollywood at the time. And it was around that same time, right before he was about to head back to Hawaii, that he ended up getting a call for the biggest role of his career, which was the movie The Karate Kid as Mr. Miyagi. Now see, what people don't know is The Karate Kid was actually based on a true story about a guy named Robert Mark Kamen, who wrote the story about how he learned karate as a teenager because he kept getting bullied and beat up by some teens growing up. And when it came time to casting for the roles, right, the Daniel LaRusso role, they was considering looking at Sean Penn, Robert Downey Jr., Charlie Sheen, Emilio Estevez, Nicolas Cage, Tom Cruise, and some other actors, right? But Ralph Macchio got the role because of his performance in a movie called The Outsiders, in which I loved back in the day, man. That was my movie right there, The Outsiders. He did a good job in The Outsiders. That's how he got the role. But when it came time to cast for the role of Mr. Miyagi, they really wanted actor Toshiro Mifune, who was a well-known Japanese actor who appeared in over 150 feature films, you know, starting way back in the 1940s. But the only problem they had with him is he just didn't speak English. And that's when one of the directors suggested that they should ask Pat Morita to audition. And some of the staff didn't really, you know, they didn't want him because of his comedy role on Happy Days. They didn't think he could be a serious actor for that role. But, you know, he read for the part. And after 5 auditions later, he landed the role of Mr. Miyagi. Pat made that movie because he used his comedy, his comedic talent in that movie. To me, he was funny in that movie too, man. He had some funny scenes in that movie. You know what's crazy? Me being a young kid, man, when that movie came out, I really thought Pat Morita in real life was like a karate kung fu master, man. But he actually had a stunt double, y'all, who did the fight scenes. Like when he beat up Johnny and them by the fence, when they had on the skeleton costumes, I thought that was, man, I really thought that old man in real life could fight. I was young though. And June 22nd, 1984, the Karate Kid movie was released to theaters, grossing over $130 million in the box office. And the movie only took $8 million to make. The movie was a big hit. And Pat ended up being nominated for the Academy Award and Golden Globe Award for Best Supporting Actor. Everybody loved Mr. Miyagi and Daniel LaRusso. I mean, they were so popular, man. They was treated like royalty at that time. Then, in 1986, The Karate Kid Part 2 was released and did about the same numbers in the box office, grossing over $130 million. I like Part 2. Part 2 was okay, having Mr. Miyagi go back to his home in Okinawa. But they actually shot that movie in Hawaii though. I like the part, broke the ice. Daniel had to fight Chosen at the end. Part 2 was okay. In 1987, Pat wrote and starred in the World War II romance movie called Captive Hearts. He had another TV show where he was the main character in called O'Hara that lasted 2 seasons. Then, in 1989, The Karate Kid Part 3 was released, but that only did $39 million in the box office, which was a big drop from the first 2 movies. And the crazy part is, for The Karate Kid Part 3, Pat was nominated for the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Supporting Actor. Wow. For short, that award is called Razzies. It's an award ceremony in recognition of the worst in film when you made a movie that is terrible. And it's usually the day before the Oscar award ceremony. But a lot of famous celebrities win that award, and they made bad movies. It happens. I didn't think The Karate Kid Part 3 was that bad, honestly, and I thought he did a good job, but a lot of the fans didn't like that one. Even Ralph Macchio said in an interview that he didn't like Part 3 because he felt that the Daniel character just never went forward. He said it felt like they were redoing the first movie in a cartoon kind of sense without the heart and soul. Wow. He said all they did was make the first one over again without any good stuff. But that same year also they did the Karate Kid animated television series. And Pat, he did the opening narration for all the episodes. After that, he continued to appear in movies and TV shows like Harry and the Hendersons and some others. And in 1994, Pat got the call from producers saying they wanted to do another Karate Kid movie, but they wanted to go a different direction for this one though. They switched it up and did the next Karate Kid without Ralph Macchio as Daniel LaRusso. And they casted a female named Hilary Swank as bully teenager Julie Pierce. And that movie only did about $16 million in the box office. But also that same year, in 1994, Pat got married to his third wife named Evelyn Guerrero, who was an actress on the TV show Dallas. And that same year, Pat also received his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. After that, he appeared in a bunch of other episodes on some sitcoms like Fresh Prince, Bel-Air, Murder, She Wrote, Boy Meets World, Married with Children, Family Matters. He played Tommy Tanaka in the Kirk Douglas starring television movie called Amos, and received his first Primetime Emmy Award nomination and second Golden Globe Award nomination for that movie. But here's the thing about Pat Morita that a lot of people may not know. He had a real bad drinking problem, y'all. it was pretty bad. His drinking was out of control. And one time he had to go to the doctor because his liver, the doctors warned him, if he continue to drink, you gonna die. They had told him that early on. Pat said he's been drinking since the age of 12 years old, and his father and grandfather were also real bad alcoholics. But, he said he drank every day and would even put vodka in his coffee. And his last wife said he did all that drinking, according to, she thinks he did all that drinking because of all the things he had to face when he was a child. He had a lot of demons. The crazy part is, in all those TV shows and movies he's done throughout his career, he was drunk, but you couldn't tell because he never messed up on lines and they never smelled it on him. Wow. That's crazy. But in his later years, it started to affect him though, because the drinking just got worse and it started to show and people could tell. And it was also hard for him to land roles as he got older because he was now an older Asian man. And with that drinking problem, he now started to show up late for parts. Once he got a job and a gig, he's showing up late for parts. And once the word got out, nobody wanted to hire him. Plus, he was typecast from the Karate Kid movie. That's why, Ralph Macchio said the same thing. Like, he did Crossroads, and my cousin Vinny, he was trying to get out that Karate Kid typecast. But one incident with Pat Morita though that really took the cake was when the show The Happy Days did the 30th anniversary reunion in 2005, right? And on the day of the first shooting, they couldn't find him because he drank too much the night before. And when they went to look for him at his hotel, they found him slumped over on the stairs, still drunk out of his mind, looking like a homeless person. Wow. Then, so they get him, right, and they take him to the set where all the cast members were, because he was supposed to do like a little skit for the reunion special. But they had to cancel that because he couldn't remember none of his lines because he was so intoxicated. He was still drunk, so intoxicated, and they couldn't use the skits. Plus, he wasn't invited to speak on a panel with the rest of the cast members, and when they didn't let him speak with the rest of the cast members on the panel, that really hurt him. And that's when he realized he had a drinking problem. And that's when he decided to go to rehab, but he relapsed, man. It was worse than ever. And it got to the point that, his drinking, him and his wife ended up separated because of his drinking. It's bad, man. And, on November 24th, 2005, Pat Morita died of kidney failure following a urinary tract and gallbladder infection. Now, some reports stated he died from heart failure, but his manager, Arnold Soloway, said he died of kidney failure while awaiting a transplant. Oh man, that's crazy, man. That drinking got him, man. Depressed. Who knows? I was watching the Cobra Kai series on Netflix, man, and it's pretty good too, man. Make sure y'all check that out when y'all get a chance. I love the Cobra Kai series. And look, there's a documentary out called More Than Miyagi. More Than Miyagi, the Pat Morita story. Y'all definitely should check out. Very good. It gets deep into his life. And Ralph Macchio, he just released a book called Waxing On, The Karate Kid and Me. So make sure y'all support that also. But yeah, Pat Morita, man, truly be missed. 73 years old. 73 years old. Rest in peace, Pat Morita.